They say you know your worth when the company panics the second you take a sick day. Vortexa Solutions sent 4 chat messages, 2 emails, and a junior developer to my door when I had a severe fever. I was their secret weapon, which is human resources jargon for doing everything, taking no credit and asking no questions. Have you ever built something with your own hands that saved the company from a 6-month backlog, only to see it rolled out under someone else's name? That was Tuesday for me. Every single Tuesday. The company ran like a fraternity dressed in khakis. Friday meetings were a shouting match of who could use the word synergy loudest. The guys with legacy last names got the corner offices. I sat behind a colleague who believed refactoring was a waste of time. My desk had 3 monitors, 2 sticky note walls, and 1 dying succulent. I did not do small talk. I did deliverables. My name is Daniel Vance, and at 48 years old, I had spent 9 years building Vortexa Solutions infrastructure. I built the tools that saved us during the supply chain fiasco. I rewrote the entire automation layer that the Chief Technology Officer, Nolan Croft, claimed was divinely inspired, which was his way of taking credit. I wrote it in an energy drink coma at 2:14 in the morning. For all that, my reward was a $30 food delivery card. That was the moment I stopped hoping. Being indispensable without being visible is a sick joke. You hold the roof up, but when it rains, they blame you for not decorating. Managers called me the database whisperer, but when promotions came, they forgot I was interested. I got a pat on the back and a promise for next quarter. I loved the work, finding a strange romance in clean code and making things that worked, even if they did not know I was the reason. But loving your work does not mean you are stupid. I watched louder colleagues with weaker skills leapfrog me into director titles. I kept my head down, telling myself it was temporary, but that became 9 years of being told I was not leadership material, while fresh interns became managers. And still, I stayed because I was planning. I was learning where every wire connected, where every trapdoor led, and how every system ticked. They forgot I architected these platforms on my own. They thought they had buried me under apathy and annual reviews. But I was not buried, I was burrowed. And if you have ever burrowed, you know what happens next. Someone steps wrong and everything caves in. The reorganization came like a sudden shock, awkward, and followed by a silence that said, "Do not ask questions, or you are next." It started with the usual corporate buzzwords about flattening the hierarchy. The translation was simple. Our chief executive officer was tired of pretending his nephew was not a walking liability and finally carved out a title for him. His nephew was Bradley Preston. He was 32 years old, fresh off a 6-week executive acceleration experience hosted at a golf resort in Arizona. His qualifications were laughable. Once, he sold a digital art token to an internet influencer for $12,000 and told everyone he ran a technology startup. The startup, by the way, was a website that collected dance challenges and crashed if you clicked a button twice. They announced Bradley at the company meeting like he was descending from the heavens. Bradley will be taking over operational oversight for the systems unit. That was my unit. Every tool, dashboard, script, and pipeline was something I had built, fed, and debugged. But now I reported directly to Bradley Preston. During our first meeting, he showed up 9 minutes late and eating a banana. He did not open his laptop, just sat scrolling his phone. When I walked him through our system dependencies, he interrupted to say he did not need me to think, just execute. He wanted me to execute like a desktop printer, treating 9 years of architecture as a button press. I chewed my cheek so hard I tasted copper. By the next morning, my access was limited. I could see folders but could not commit code or deploy updates. There was no explanation, just revoked keys. The support team claimed it was a glitch. Then they stopped responding, and I knew what was happening. I dug around quietly and found a document in a shared folder uploaded by Bradley Preston. It was a copy of my optimization framework. Every method and comment line still carried my unique language, but the authorship was changed to Bradley. He had not even cleaned it up. My initials were still in the changelog. He had basically slapped his name on my car while leaving my old wrappers in the glove box. I thought about reporting it, but remembered Lila Henderson from accounting, who was let go 3 weeks after reporting similar credit theft. So I did not report it. I documented. I saved screenshots, logs, and commit histories. They thought I was an old dog too scared to bite. What they did not know was this old dog had already started marking the exits. And Bradley assignment strutted around like the king of stolen castles, holding meetings with vice presidents where he misused technical terms. Every time he swaggered past my desk, I smiled sweetly. The way you smile at a man who does not realize his parachute has been swapped for a laundry bag. Outwardly, I adapted to the new order at Vortexa Solutions. I showed up early, sat through Bradley Preston's jargon-soaked meetings, and nodded along like his insights were not stolen straight from technology blogs written by anonymous internet writers. I smiled when he called my database cleanup tools some neat background sparkle. I even forced a laugh when he suggested we rename the primary build to Bradley Core, as if the software were a brand of cologne. But inside, I was preparing my defense. The first thing I did was retrieve my backups from an encrypted thumb drive, shaped like a lipstick tube that I kept at home. It contained every version of my core systems, from early drafts to final rollouts, all timestamped and documented with screenshot receipts. A decade of digital DNA, all mine. I had spent countless nights writing that code, and I was not about to let an executive nephew sweep it away for his career advancement. Then, I started scheduling meetings. To human resources and my colleagues, I was just exploring external options. I left my calendar open on purpose, dropping vague entries like consult and deep system review. I let them think I was hunting for a new job. Bradley even cornered me in the break room once, looking smug, and told me that if I was thinking of jumping ship, I should finish the winter rollout first. I blinked at him and promised I would not want the ship to crash without a map. He laughed, patted my shoulder, and walked away, completely unaware that the map in question was actually a legal minefield. But those calendar meetings were not with recruiters. They were with intellectual property lawyers. I met with them in a quiet office downtown, showing them how my original systems, coded over long weekends in my pajamas while my former partner complained about me, marrying my keyboard, had been integrated into Vortex's infrastructure without a single licensing agreement. I showed them how their new automation tool still ran on a command string I invented 5 years ago while watching television. The lawyers did not just nod, they smiled that slow, knowing smile that means a massive lawsuit had just walked in the door. They were the first people to call me a founder, and it felt like a bucket of cold water waking me up. That was when I realized I was not just an employee being erased. I was an owner whose house had been occupied by squatter executives who could not read a blueprint. My lead attorney explained that because I had built the initial prototypes outside of company hours on my personal equipment, and before any formal employment agreement covered those specific systems, Vortexa had no legal right to claim them as work for hire. So, I filed 3 provisional patents, clean and ironclad. One was for the system optimization layer, one was for the automation integration logic, and the last was for the interface translator Bradley had recently shown to clients at a summit. It did not matter if Vortexa was using them now. It mattered that I had the receipts, the timestamps, and my name legally on the bones of their product. I filed them in a coffee shop at 7:43 in the evening on a Wednesday. There was no champagne, just a quiet email confirmation and a low hum of righteous satisfaction. At work, Bradley kept parading around like an emperor in a discount crown. He held a division alignment session where he played a video of fake interface mock-ups and claimed we were redefining the future. No one understood a word, but they clapped. I clapped too, just a beat slower. It was surreal watching them build their entire launch strategy on top of my code like it was toy bricks and not live infrastructure. Every time they demoed a feature to investors, I watched closely. Would someone finally realize the heartbeat of their platform still thumped to my cadence? They never did, but that is the problem with thieves. They are so busy admiring what they have stolen. They do not realize the owner changed the locks weeks ago. From the outside, I was just another overworked developer trying to make it to Friday. From the inside, I was a bomb waiting to go off, and I had just started the countdown. My office life became a study in quiet observation. The company culture shifted rapidly under Bradley's influence. No one joked in the break room anymore. It was all posturing and jockeying for his approval. He started naming innovation squads with childish nicknames and renamed my custom dashboard the Speed Zone. He asked if we could gamify our database and told marketing I would help them build a client war room. Even though I had not spoken to him since our first meeting, I stayed silent and gathered everything. Every line of code he repackaged, every module renamed, every system that now bore his initials. I let him take it because wolves in sheep's clothing always forget that some of us still know how to hunt. To make sure my documentation was complete, I began taking daily notes. I cataloged every single code deployment, noting how my original modules had been copied without modification. I kept these records on a secure private cloud storage account. I knew that in a legal dispute, the side with the most organized evidence wins. The lawyers agreed, telling me that having detailed logs would make our case undeniable. I spent my evenings organizing folders, labeling screenshots, and matching code commits to my personal development diaries. It was exhausting work, but every time I felt tired, I pictured Bradley's smug face and kept typing. The company meeting was held in the Innovation Lounge, which was just a rebranded storage room, with colored lights and beanbags that smelled like gym socks and corporate desperation. They brought in wraps, played loud music, and handed out bottles that said, "Build the future." I stared at the phrase, thinking that I already did. Bradley strutted in like a king, wearing a bomber jacket over a designer shirt. Someone handed him a microphone, which he did not need, but used anyway because he thought it made him look like a public speaker. "Team, we have been running too slow, building too small," he began, pacing back and forth. "That ends today." He gestured toward the big screen as a slide popped up labeled the Preston Framework. I blinked because there it was, my workflow, my exact build, the one I had spent years tuning like a violin in a hurricane. Only now it had been simplified into marketing slides with a cheap font and renamed as if he had conceived it himself. The presentation slides were filled with bright orange diagrams and stock photos of smiling business models. Bradley pointed to the screen and explained how his framework would revolutionize our data flows. He used phrases like paradigm shift and quantum efficiency, which were just empty words to mask his ignorance. The slides detailed my integration queue and my load balancer prototype, presenting them as if they were his own breakthroughs. I sat in the back row, watching the chief technology officer nod as if he were witnessing the birth of a genius. Bradley even paused to receive applause, smiling as if he had actually written a single line of the codebase. It was a surreal comedy, like watching someone accept an award for a movie you filmed in your garage on a basic phone. Sitting in that dimly lit room, surrounded by colleagues who were clapping for a framework they did not understand, I realized how much of my life I had given to Vortexa. 9 years of long weekends, of missed dinners, and of skipped vacations. I had poured my creative energy into building a system that was now being used as a ladder for Bradley Preston's career. It was a painful realization, but it was also clarifying. It swept away any remaining loyalty I had to the company. I was no longer interested in recognition or promotion. I was interested in justice. I was going to take back my creations, and I was going to do it in a way that would leave no doubt about who the real architect was. After the applause died down, my manager, who had avoided eye contact for days, sidled over. "Bradley wants you to onboard our new junior developer," she said. "Walk her through the method, make sure she really gets it." I smiled and agreed, saying I would not want her to miss out on his brilliance. The junior developer Chloe Miller showed up the next day. She was a fresh boot camp graduate, nervous and eager. She came to my desk with a notepad full of Bradley quotes she had written down during the presentation. "So, did you get a chance to work on any part of the Preston system before he took over?" she asked, looking at me with genuine curiosity. "A few bits," I said, trying not to choke on my own sarcasm. "But I am mostly here to support his vision now." I spent the next 4 hours walking through the actual code, not the clean diagrams Bradley presented. I explained the database connections, the caching layers, and the queue worker scripts that kept Vortex's systems online. Chloe was smart and picked it up fast, but she soon tilted her head in confusion. "This part sounds a lot like the draft notes I saw in the old wiki," she noted, pointing to a comment block on my screen. "There is no attribution here." I just raised an eyebrow and kept going, letting her draw her own conclusions. I did not want to push her, but I wanted her to see the truth. Later, that night, I dug into the internal database and found a section titled Preston Ops Future Ready Foundations. It was paragraph after paragraph of text pulled from my personal design journals, word for word. He had even copied a typo I made once, writing efficiency instead of efficiency. He had not stolen my work, he had wholesale imported it. But I noticed something else. One of the paragraphs ended with a line I had written as a joke to myself. Note to future self. If anyone ever calls this the Preston method, I will personally puke into the mainframe. It was still there, unedited. He had not even read what he stole. This was no longer just about credit, it was about control, and it was about to be mine again. I shut my laptop, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The trap was set and Bradley had walked right into it, carrying my bait in his hands. To ensure Chloe did not get caught in the upcoming blast, I made sure she understood the core principles of software architecture rather than just the copied Preston tools. I taught her how to build modular systems, how to handle database scaling, and how to write clean documentation. She appreciated the guidance, and I could see she was growing more skeptical of Bradley's grand claims every day. In a way, teaching her was my way of leaving a legacy behind. I wanted to make sure that when I left, there would still be someone in the office who knew how the system actually worked, even if the management remained completely clueless. The summons came at 9:42 in the morning, mid-sprint planning, with the subject line regarding calendar discrepancies. I closed my laptop, stood up, and took the long walk to the conference room human resources used for terminations. Bradley was already there, sipping from a thermos. Across from him sat Greta Higgins from Human Resources, wearing her usual clinical expression. "We have been reviewing some irregularities in your schedule," Greta began, looking at her tablet. "What details did you want to discuss?" I asked, maintaining a calm demeanor. "Well," Greta said, "you have multiple entries labeled consult and private appointments. These are not on your project docket." Bradley leaned forward, fake concern in eyes, and said they were worried about transparency. They needed to ensure there was no cross-pollination of proprietary material, especially since my recent system accesses had been limited. "Have you been communicating with external firms about company tools?" Greta asked. I stared at them, then at the glass of water they provided. I leaned back and said calmly that if they were firing me, they should just do it, because otherwise I had work to finish. Silence filled the room. Greta blinked and Bradley opened his mouth in surprise. They wanted me flustered and apologetic, but instead I stood up, told them to let me know before lunch, and walked out. I did not slam the door. I walked like someone with clean hands and a bulletproof calendar. Every meeting was private and logged on my own time. I had not used company tools or data, but Bradley did not care about facts, and Human Resources only cared about containment. Exactly 24 hours later, I received the termination email. Violation of confidentiality protocol, effective immediately. Security would escort me to retrieve my belongings, and they attached the non-disclosure agreement they claimed I violated. I did not reply. I had no reason to respond to their false accusations. I arrived that afternoon with a box, packed my monitors, my mug, and my dying succulent, and walked out. The office was quiet. Some developers looked away while others stared in shock. Bradley stood by the elevator with a smug smile, saying there were no hard feelings. I turned and smiled back, saying he caught me. The doors closed, and he was gone. I was finally free. I walked out of the building, feeling the cool afternoon breeze on my face. It was the first time in 9 years that I did not feel the weight of Vortex's servers on my shoulders. By the end of the week, the office had turned my name into a scandal. The official line was that I was let go due to breach of trust and potential leaks to competitors. In chat threads, it got uglier, with rumors that I had been meeting with rivals for months. Bradley loved it, strutting around and talking about pruning the company to grow. He even renamed the developer announcement channel to Bradley Lab. I did not respond. A few colleagues sent messages of support, but I left them on read because I had no time for pity. I turned my apartment into a war room, drawing the curtains and silencing my phone. The rumor mill at Vortexa was efficient, if nothing else. Within 48 hours, colleagues I had worked with for years stopped replying to my personal texts. I received a few half-hearted messages wishing me luck, but most people chose to believe the company narrative. It was easier for them to pretend I was the bad guy than to admit they were working for a management team that stole from its own engineers. I did not hold a grudge. In their position, keeping their heads down was a survival mechanism, but it was a stark reminder of how disposable we are in the eyes of corporate leadership. Only my first hire, the junior developer Chloe Miller, had the courage to send a genuine message. She told me she was shocked by my termination and thanked me for the training she had received from me. I wrote back, telling her to keep her head down and keep learning. I knew that soon I would be in a position to offer her a much better role. The provisional patents were already filed, and now came the formal submission. It meant creating complex process diagrams in dry legal text, but I did not flinch. Every clause was a nail in the coffin of Bradley's stolen empire. I documented the system structure and timeline comparisons, stitching together commit records and old video logs. In one recording, you could see the prototype Bradley demoed, time-stamped 3 months prior with my voice explaining it. They thought they fired a liability, but they had actually freed an architect with nothing left to lose. I set up my dining table as a workspace, aligning my 3 monitors and positioning my external hard drives. My apartment became a quiet sanctuary of focus. I spent my days writing detailed legal outlines and organizing commit logs by date. The walls of my dining room were covered in printed flowcharts, showing the lineage of the codebase from its earliest versions. I wanted to make sure that my attorney, Clara Mercer, had a complete and organized folder of evidence. Every time I felt tired, I reminded myself that Vortexa was trying to build their entire future on my stolen work. I was not going to let them succeed. I was going to reclaim what was mine. The email arrived at 6:17 in the morning, carrying 3 PDF documents and a message from my attorney, Clara Mercer. All filings accepted, cease and desist drafts queued. By 9 in the morning, the notices went out. Certified mail was delivered to the Chief Technology Officer, Nolan Croft, the Board of Directors, and the client LogiPass Systems. The letters named specific integration flows and modules that were active in their platform, proving they were legally mine under federal patent infringement laws, specifically 35 United States Code Section 271. While they read the legal documents, I activated my second plan. I had my lawyers send a polite clarification letter to LogiPath Systems, informing them that certain modules in Vortexa's environment were protected under new patent ownership, and usage without a license could result in legal complications. Within 48 hours, LogiPath Systems paused their deployment for legal review. The balance of power shifted immediately. Inside Vortexa Solutions, the walls began to close in. The cease and desist triggered a forensic audit. The Chief Technology Officer had to face the paper trail he had ignored for years, pulling up version histories and finding my initials in every codebase. They even found the test script containing my joke comment about puking into the mainframe. It was humiliating for them. The forensic audit conducted by the Chief Technology Officer, Nolan Croft, revealed that my code was the foundation of the entire software suite. They attempted to find a way to decouple my patented modules from the core infrastructure, but their junior developers soon realized it was impossible. My architecture was modular but deeply integrated. Removing my modules would have caused the entire platform to crash, halting operations for all their clients. The General Counsel of Vortexa advised the board that they had no legal defense. If they continued using my code without a license, they faced massive statutory damages under federal patent law. This realization forced their hand. They had to settle on my terms. Bradley was cornered in a meeting with the board and began to flail, claiming he guided the architecture, but the metadata showed he had simply changed the names of my modules. A legal blog picked up the story, publishing a side-by-side comparison of Bradley's architecture and my patent diagrams, which were identical. Investors panicked, and an international client halted a $4,600,000 contract due to the intellectual property dispute. Bradley stopped posting on LinkedIn, and his previous posts were deleted. The board scheduled an emergency meeting, and Bradley Preston was placed on administrative leave pending review. The fallout was swift. Human resources directors were ousted, including Greta Higgins. The chief technology officer kept his job but reported directly to the board, while two vice presidents resigned. Their careers at Vortexa were over. Then came the settlement offer. Vortexa agreed to a seven-figure payment, full acknowledgement of my ownership, and agreed to license the software under my new company. Paying annual royalties, the negotiation took place in a glass conference room downtown. Vortexa's lawyer sat across from us, their faces pale and tired. They offered a cash payment of $1,500,000, along with a 5% royalty on all future revenue generated by the systems. I accepted the offer. 3 weeks later, my new company, Ondri, went live. I launched with 3 major clients and hired Chloe Miller as my first developer. I handed her a laptop and told her that here, if she built it, it was yours. The code at Vortexa still runs with my design in its veins, and every time they use it, they pay me for the privilege. Foundry's first week was a whirlwind of activity. Chloe and I worked side by side, refining the software architecture to make it even faster. It was the first time in my career that I felt a true sense of ownership over my creations. We were not just cogs in a corporate machine. We were founders building our own future. Our first client, LogiPath Systems, signed a long-term contract with Foundry, preferring to work directly with the creator of the systems. Other clients soon followed, leaving Vortexa behind. The corporate giants who thought they could erase my contributions were now paying me royalties just to keep their servers running. I had not just survived the purge, I had triumphed. Looking back, I realized that their attempt to erase me was the best thing that ever happened to my career. It forced me to step out of the shadows and claim my true value. Foundry is growing rapidly, and we are already planning our next major software release. Bradley Preston is still trying to rebuild his reputation, but in the tech world, once you are exposed as a fraud, it is almost impossible to recover. I am finally in control of my own destiny, and I will never let anyone steal my work again.